right, court will call 20 CR 1358 People versus Letecia Stauch. Record should reflect the jury's not present in court. Is there anything you want to take up outside the presence of the jury at this point in time? Prosecution? No, Your Honor. Okay, let's go ahead, Greg.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Grizzly True Crime. Here we are, day 5 of the Letecia Stauch trial, week 2. It's expected to last between 6 and 8 weeks, okay? So if you missed all the other streams, check them out as well. But here we are. We're waiting for the jury to come in now, I believe. Let's see Letecia in the corner there. If you don't know anything about this case, check out the playlist that's linked in the description box for you. There we go. She's looking bored in the corner here. Yes, Van, I've got the blazer on.
All rise for the jury, please.
Hello, Jackie. Umschlanger. I will be covering this trial every single day that it's happening. Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. There's no trial coverage on Thursdays, according to the judge. So make sure that you are subscribed with a bell on so that you can follow along with us and chat with our community as this trial happens. We're thinking of...
Thank you. May all be seated.
Gannon Stauch, who was murdered on January 27, 2020.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start our day again as we have every other day. Has anything occurred since we were last together that causes any of you to believe that you could not continue to serve as a fair and impartial juror in this case? If so, please raise your hand. No response? All right. When we took our break on Friday, we were still in the midst of the prosecution's case in chief. That's where we will resume today. Mr. Allen, call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. We would call Dr. Susan Ignacio.
Dr. Ignacio, if you would step forward and raise your right hand, please, ma'am.
And then the witness stands right there.
You swear affirm the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand. All right, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Your Honor. Doctor, will you please introduce yourself to our jury and then spell your first and last name for the record?
My name is Susan Ignacio, Susanignacio.
Dr. Ignacio, what is your occupation?
I'm an associate medical examiner
Where is that?
at the District 6 Medical Examiner's Office in Largo, Florida.
Okay. Can you give the jury your employment history basically as an assistant medical examiner?
I did a year after my fellowship in forensic pathology in Miami. I did a year in District 5, that's in Leesburg, Florida. And then after that, I worked at the District 6 Medical Examiner's Office, and it's been approximately 23 years.
23 years as a associate medical examiner?
Yes.
What do you do as an associate medical examiner?
We determine the cause and manner of death by performing autopsies or external examinations of a dead person.
Okay. Do you have specific education that allows you to do that job?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about that, please?
4 years of med school, 5 years of general pathology, a year of forensic pathology.
What schools did you go to?
I went to med school in the Philippines, and then I did my 5 years of general pathology in Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami, and then a year of forensic pathology in the Miami-Dade Medical Examiner's Office.
Do you also participate in training that allows you to stay current on your job?
Yes.
Tell the jury some of that, please.
Every year we attend meetings, conferences by the National Association of Medical Examiners and the Florida Association of Medical Examiners.
Are you licensed?
Yes,
Tell the jury about that.
my license?
Yeah. I mean, what state are you licensed?
Oh, I'm licensed in Florida.
How long have you been licensed in Florida?
24 years, I think.
Do you have certifications that you hold as a part of your job?
Yes, we have to take a board exam after after my general pathology residency. I had to take a board exam that's in anatomic pathology. So I'm board certified in anatomic pathology, and then I had to take a board exam after my forensic pathology. So I'm board certified in forensic pathology.
Okay. How long have you held that certification?
20 years.
Okay. Quite a long time.
Yes.
How many autopsies have you performed as an associate medical examiner?
At least 6,000.
Have you testified as an expert witness in a court proceeding?
Yes.
Can you give the jury a rough estimate as to how many times you've testified as an expert?
I don't know. It's too many to count.
Can you give the jury an impression of where you've testified as an expert? And what I mean by where is which courts?
Mostly in Florida, or all in Florida, in Miami, Pinellas and Pasco counties. Those are my counties in District 6. I testified in federal court in Tampa, which is Hillsborough County. When I used to work in District 5, there are 5 counties, so I testified in those 5 courthouses. Volusia County, which is Daytona Beach, and Miami-Dade.
Okay, so am I right to understand that you've testified as an expert witness in both federal court and in state court,
Yes.
all in Florida?
Yes.
At this time, I would move to have Dr. Ignacio qualified as an expert witness in forensic pathology.
Defense?
No objection.
Witness will be so qualified. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Ignacio, I want to have you go back to March of 2020. Were you helping out in Santa Rosa County for any autopsies that they needed at that time?
Yes.
Did you get involved in an autopsy of a young child by the name of Gannon Stauch?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury how that happened, how you got involved in that?
We were helping District 1, which is in Pensacola. We were covering that district, so I happened to be working that week there.
And what were the, I guess, the initial information that you got before you performed that autopsy?
I was told that there was a decomposed body of a child found inside a suitcase underneath the highway.
Were you able to see some pictures of that body as it was recovered underneath that bridge?
Yes, I saw the scene photos.
And then the body that was brought to you for the autopsy process, was it the same body that you were able to visually observe in those photographs from the scene under the bridge?
Yes.
What date did you actually perform the autopsy?
On March 18.
Okay. And Your Honor, may I approach with People's Exhibits 144 through 180?
You may go ahead.
First, and Your Honor, can I stand here for just a moment? while I
Yeah,
do
that's fine.
These bigger diagrams. I'm showing you what's first been marked as 144. Do you recognize this?
Yes,
What is 144?
that's my body diagram.
Is this taken directly from your autopsy report?
Yes,
Is it a fair and accurate representation of the overall body diagram that you generated for this autopsy?
yes,
And then 145 and 146, do you recognize these items?
yes.
145, what does it appear to be? This is the top one.
Yeah, that's the diagram of the head.
Did you prepare this when you prepared your autopsy report in this case?
Yes,
And then 146, do you recognize this?
yes.
What is 146?
It's the diagram of the top of the head, the skull, and under the chin.
Is it, did you prepare this the same time as you performed or prepared the autopsy report for this case?
Yes,
Are these exhibits 144, 145, and 146 fair and accurate representations of the diagrams you prepared?
yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd move for admission of 144, 145, and 146.
Defense?
No objection, Judge.
You will have to submit copies of those for uploading after the case is done, because obviously you can't do those. So, but other than that, 144, 145, and 146 are admitted. Go ahead.
And then, Doctor, while I'm going to set these diagrams up, if you could look through the rest, 147 through 180, I believe it is. Will you flip through those and tell me when you're done looking at those? Tell me when you're done.
That's a lot of pictures to go through. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it.
Okay,
Have you had a chance to look through all of those, Doctor?
yes.
What do all of 147 through 180 appear to be?
These are the photographs of the decedent.
Are they fair and accurate representations of what you saw when you performed the autopsy on March 18th of 2020 on the young child Gannon Stauch?
Yes,
Your Honor, at this time, I would move for admission of 147 through 180.
Mr. Cook? Right. 7.
No objection.
It's 147 through 180 will be admitted. Go ahead.
And permission to publish, Your Honor.
You may.
Go to 7. So Dr. Ignacio, I've got 147 on the board behind you. And then to help the jury understand what we're looking at here, if you need to reference any of the body diagrams, please just let us know which body diagram that we need to have up on the easel. And then we'll use that to coincide with what we have in the photographs up on the screen. Is that okay?
Okay.
So in People's 147, is that a picture from the scene underneath the bridge of the boy that was eventually identified as Gannon Stauch?
Yes.
What?
And is that the same child that you performed the autopsy on?
It's like, could be from the clothing.
Okay.
Sorted, guys.
So
Sorted.
clothing can have an effect on a body as it's decomposing as well?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a measurement device there in People's Exhibit 148 as well. Is there a wound apparent in People's Exhibit 148 that you can point out for the jury? And if you need to stand up, you can feel free.
There's a laceration here on the left chest. Right, this one here. You can't really see it clearly because of the decomposition. The lines are ill-defined. There's a wound here, a wound here. Here. There's another wound up here.
And then as we go through these photos, is it a wide angle shot like this where you can see sort of contextually where a wound might be and then it zooms in closer in the next photo?
Yes.
All right. When you say a laceration, just so that we're all on the same page.
It's
Yeah.
not a laceration, it's a sharp force injury.
Okay. So that's what I wanted to ask you about. A sharp force injury, what does that mean when a person like you, a medical examiner, says that?
It's a wound caused by a sharp object like a knife or a blade.
Okay. And can you tell us, generally speaking, we're going to look at a number of these sort of sharp force injuries. Are these deep injuries, shallow injuries, generally speaking?
It depends. Some could be shallow, superficial, or they can be deep.
And that's as apparent in this particular autopsy as well. Some are deeper than others.
Yes.
Okay. If we could go on to 149. Is 149 a close-up of what we just looked at in 148?
Yes, this is a close-up.
So can you tell us, as we look at that, how we understand that to be a sharp force injury? What about it tells us that?
Looking at the wound here, you can't really tell it clearly, but when it went into the rib, the third rib, you could see that it's a sharp, like clean cut line because it hit the rib and the space between the two ribs, which is called the intercostal space where there's muscle. So that wound there looks like a knife wound or something that's sharp, caused by something sharp.
Did the decomposition state of this body cause some difficulty in identifying injuries that might have been contributing to what caused the death in this case?
Some of them.
Okay. Now, if we can move on to 150.
This is another sharp force injury. And you can see that it doesn't really look like a sharp force injury because it's got jagged edges from the decomposition. But then you can see the wound inside that it was just like a linear, straight, clean cut wound.
If we could go on to 151.
And that's a close-up of the wound.
So let's talk, now that we're seeing this one close up, this looks almost like a hole in the body as opposed to a slit or a slice or maybe even a stab. Tell the jury why that might be for this particular injury and how you can still call this a sharp force injury.
Yes, if you look at the skin here where it was cut, it's clean, it's a straight line. But because of decomposition, there's stretching of the skin and it loses elasticity. So that's why it looks round and not slit-like. Like this one is another wound that looks like a sharp force injury. You can see that it's got sharp tips. That looks like a knife wound.
Okay. If we can move on to 152, I believe the numbering is.
So there's another sharp force injury in the chest, the left chest. And you can see that it's also elongated. that didn't enter that didn't enter the chest cavity, but just hit the muscle, the pectoralis muscle.
Okay, and then 153.
That's a close-up. You can see that it's got a clean line there. Straight edge.
Okay, and then these measuring devices that we see in these photographs, does that help us give an idea as to how long a particular wound might be?
Yes.
Okay. 154.
Showing the sharp force injury that's like right above the clavicle on the left.
One thing I want to have you point out in this particular photo, Dr. Ignacio, is there's a blurred area on this particular photo. Has that been altered?
Yes.
Does that just, if it had been unblurred, would show the victim's face?
Yes.
And is this just to be more sensitive to the victim and potentially the jurors as we're watching this or looking at these?
Yes.
155.
This just shows you a close-up view of the same one that was above the clavicle, left clavicle.
And this one again looks almost roundish. How can you tell and how can we understand this to be a sharp force injury as well?
The edges are clean and straight. It's not jagged. And the wound that was in the muscle was also straight.
Okay. 156.
This one shows you another sharp force injury in the left upper arm that's near the armpit, right there.
And 157.
And this is a close-up view.
So now that we've seen several of these sharp force injuries where they're almost pulled open and in a rounded appearance, is that basically what you testified to earlier, that as the skin is shrinking and pulling away, that it pulls the wound open more than it would have if we were close in time to when these injuries occurred?
Yes.
Okay. 158.
Here's another sharp force injury on the left wrist region.
And this one we can now see must have been taken before the clothing was taken off the body. You can see some of the clothing that the victim was wearing. Is that likely what the person was wearing when they died?
Yes,
How can you tell that?
because of all the fluids, decomposition fluids, the coloring, the clothing.
We had a crime scene technician from Santa Rosa testify late last week that also testified that there were defects in the clothing indicating that there were these slices or sharp object cuts into the fabric that coincided with the injuries we see on the body. Did you notice that as well?
Yes.
Okay. 159.
159 is a close-up view of the wound on the left upper arm, like near the axilla.
Okay. In all of these injuries that we're looking at, are all of those injuries marked on that body diagram that you have up on the easel there, which
Yes.
is 144?
Yes.
Okay. If we could go to one. What are we looking at in 160?
So this is a photograph of the left hand, and there's it kind of covers, the ruler covers it, but there's another cut here. Sharp force injury.
Then moving on to 161.
And this is the right hand, the back of the right hand. And you can see here that you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 wounds here. And you can see like the edges are clean cut caused by a sharp object.
And we're looking at these in conjunction with the last photo of the arm and then this one here with hands. When we're talking about cuts to the hands in the forearm areas of Gannon Stauch, How would you characterize those types of wounds?
They're consistent with defensive wounds,
Okay.
trying to protect yourself.
Indicating that potentially Gannon was putting his hands up to guard against whatever was happening,
Yes,
and then they get cut in the process of that.
yes.
Okay. 162, please.
This one shows, excuse me, this one shows the right hand, like the palmar aspect of the right hand. And this is another cut in the middle finger, right middle finger.
163.
It's the same photo right there.
Okay, and this is
This
just
is the ring finger.
right.
This is the, oh, sorry. No, sorry, that's the middle finger and the ring finger's right here.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on. I need to make another blocked one. Hold on. This is bad, guys.
Right there.
This sharp force injury to the upper back, was this one of the deeper sharp force injuries that you were able to document that Gannon suffered?
Yes, it fractured the left sixth rib and it also penetrated the left fifth intercostal space. So that's the space between the fifth and sixth ribs.
Does that then cause, I guess, entry into, I guess, the back side of the chest cavity? Does it go that deep?
Yes, it does enter the chest cavity.
165.
And that's a close-up view of the back injury.
Again, is this a sharp force injury similar to the other sharp force injuries we've been looking at this morning?
Yes.
166.
So there's another sharp force injury here. Another one here.
Would this be essentially the back side of Gannon's left shoulder?
Yes. So this wound ended in the scapula. It hit the bone here, so it just went through the bone, the shoulder blade. And then this one went deeper into the shoulder joint, the left shoulder joint, about 4 inches deep.
4 inches deep, you said?
Yes.
167, please. This is a close-up of that more shallow injury, and then the other deeper one is apparent sort of to the left of that.
Yes.
There appears to be some black fiber there. Can you tell the jury what that is?
It could be from his jacket or t-shirt.
So basically fibers from clothing.
Yes.
Is it common for fibers from clothing to get caught up in wounds when there's these sharp force injuries that travel from outside of clothing through the clothing and into the body?
Yes.
168.
This is another view of the top of the shoulder where you can see the injury that went into the shoulder joint.
169.
That's a close-up view. And you know that it's a sharp force injury because it's got clean edges here.
So when you're pointing at those, what you call clean edges, to me, it doesn't necessarily look that way, but I'm not in your shoes with your expertise. Those edges that you're pointing at, is that where the skin would have met before being sliced open?
Yes, this is fat, subcutaneous tissue underneath the skin. So these are the skin edges, but they just like, stretched and separated. But this is where it was cut.
And is this that deeper injury that you mentioned just a moment ago?
Yes,
To the, basically the top, maybe backish part of his left shoulder?
it entered the shoulder joint.
Okay. 170.
This one is a blurred photo of another sharp force injury on the left forearm.
The inside of the left forearm.
Yes,
And then this one also has a blurred area sort of in the groin area. Do you see that?
yes,
Is that blurred out just for sensitivity's sake?
yes.
171.
And that's a close-up view. So you can see it's got another sharp edge and you've just got tissue that's coming out from the wound, but that's the cut edge right here.
Okay. And this is on the, what I would describe as inside of the left wrist, is that right?
Yes,
Or forearm area?
yes.
172. What are we looking at in 172?
So this is the head and you're looking at the left side, the ear is right here. So there's a cut right in the posterior or the back part of the ear on the scalp.
173.
And a close-up view, the cut.
Let's talk, since we're now seeing for the first time head injuries. Can you tell the jury, just so that we're all clear, do head injuries have a tendency to bleed heavier than other types of injuries that a human could sustain?
Yes, there's a lot of blood vessels in the scalp.
And does that cause more bloodletting, potentially staining of scenes where blood is coming out of a person?
Yes.
174.
So we're looking at the right side of the head and we're trying to show, this time it's a laceration. It's not caused by a sharp object. It's caused by a blunt object. So we call them lacerations because it's so hard to see because it's decomposed, but the edges are jagged and underneath the skin, you can still see what they call tissue bridging. That means it wasn't completely cut. Like with a knife, you can completely cut the skin and the subcutaneous tissue, but with blunt trauma, with a blunt object, you may still see some tissue that's not separated yet. So this is a laceration on the right temporal region.
So would this be basically right side of the head towards almost a little bit to the back of the head there?
Yes, the ear is right here, right ear, and then you can see that there's a wound here.
Okay. 175.
And here you can see the wound. I don't know if you can see it, but that's the wound right here. And you can see like the edges are not like a knife wound.
So these injuries, as you look at them as the expert in this, the edges are different to you from what we've seen before from the sharp force injuries.
Yes.
And then when we talk about a blunt force injury like this, what kind of things can cause a blunt force injury like these?
Any blunt object like a bat, piece of wood, hammer.
Could even the butt of a gun.
Yes.
176.
So this is another laceration that's on the top of the head.
And when you say laceration, are we again talking about another blunt force injury
Yes.
to the top of Gannon's head?
Yes, and then this is the skull, the bone right here, and there are no fractures.
Okay. 170, is it 77? 177?
So this is the one we were looking at previously, and then there were other two lacerations on the top of the head.
And again, just so that we're clear, when we say other two lacerations on the top of the head, are those other two also blunt force injuries?
Yes, and you can see that the edges are jagged. It's not like a clean cut. So that's why I called it laceration.
Okay. 178.
So when we peel the scalp, remember the laceration that was on the right temporal region behind the ear? These are skull fractures right here. And then some of the bone fell and you can see some brain tissue, decomposed brain. So this is a fracture, 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 fracture.
When we talk about this area of the skull, you use the word temporal. Does that to layperson mean temple area basically extending to the back area?
Yes,
Is that bone thinner than other parts of the skull on the head?
yes, the temporal bone is, but it also involves the other bones.
And so what I'm driving at is, would it take a lot of force to cause these types of fractures through a blunt force strike?
Yes.
And just so we're clear, since we've moved past the sharp force injuries and now we've looked at all of the blunt force injuries in these photographs, how many sharp force injuries did Gannon suffer that you were able to document in your autopsy?
I counted 18.
And then as it relates to the number of blunt force injuries that Gannon suffered, how many did those occur?
4 lacerations.
4 lacerations that coincide with blunt force injury?
Yes.
Okay. If we could move on to 179. What are we looking at in 179?
So this is the left side of the face. Here's the ear, head, eye area. This is the jaw. The left side of the jaw, lower jaw, and there's a hole right here.
What caused that hole?
This is due to a gunshot wound.
180.
And this is a close-up gunshot wound.
Is it typical, doctor, when you document a gunshot to try to figure out path the bullet traveled as it entered into a human victim?
Yes,
Did you do that in this case?
yes.
Can you describe, either using the diagrams or just through words, however you want to do it, can you describe the path that this particular bullet took through Gannon as it entered his body?
I think we should use,
Okay, I'll come over and help.
oh, it's not really.
Which one do you want? 46, 145? 145? Make it easier on our jury, we also got the shortest easel we could find. So I'm gonna hold this up actually, doctor, if that's
I
okay.
can go back.
That's, well, they won't be able to see it
Okay.
back there.
So the entrance gunshot wound was in the left side of the jaw, lower jaw, the mandible. This entered the oral cavity. It hit the cervical, this second and third cervical vertebrae. So it went to the back. It crossed the midline, and I recovered the projectile. It didn't enter the skull, the cranial cavity, so I recovered it on the right side where the muscles are of the neck. So there was a projectile that went from left to right and then front to back.
And then, so when you recovered the projectile, was it still in the, basically the muscle tissue in the back of the head?
Yes.
Okay. So, doctor, you can sit back down if you'd like. When we're talking about the types of injuries that Gannon, that you were able to identify as that Gannon had suffered, 18 sharp force injuries, 4 blunt force lacerations, and then 1 gunshot through the chin. Does that indicate to you that there's some progression that these injuries had to occur in?
Yes.
Tell the jury what we mean by that and what it is that you're using to rely on and make that conclusion.
Regarding the sharp force injuries coming first,
Well, do you know which one came first?
I don't really know, but I'm thinking that it's the sharp force injuries because he could still defend himself. And then I don't know which one came first, the gunshot wound or the blunt trauma to the head, which caused fractures of his skull and bleeding in his brain.
So the best that you can tell is that sharp force injuries occurred before gunshot. Is that right?
Yes.
But it's unclear whether blunt force or gunshot, which one of those occurred first.
Yes.
Does that indicate some period of time to achieve all of those injuries for whoever was attacking him?
Yes.
The fact that there's 18 sharp force injuries
Yes.
and then 4 blunt force injuries
Yes.
and then a gunshot that entered into the lower left chin and traveled through the oral cavity and all that.
Yes.
What were you able to rule as the cause and manner of death for Gannon Stauch?
My cause of death was gunshot wound and blunt head trauma of the head.
Were there contributing factors to the cause of death?
Yes, sharp force injuries.
Those 18 sharp force injuries that we talked about?
Yes,
And what was the manner of death?
homicide.
Is it typical, doctor, that you perform a toxicology test as well
Yes,
when you do an autopsy?
yes.
What is the purpose of doing a toxicology report?
We do it in all violent deaths, and it's to determine whether there were any drugs or what drugs were in the system.
Was that performed on Gannon Stauch?
Yes,
Was there anything unusual detected in Gannon Stauch at the time of autopsy?
there were some drugs, or there was a drug that was present.
Okay, so let's talk first. Acetaminophen, a typical over-the-counter medication, was that found in Gannon?
Yes,
Would that be anything unusual that a child would have potentially residual acetaminophen at the time of autopsy?
if maybe the patient the decedent at that time was having a fever or pain, they would give them acetaminophen or Tylenol.
Would that be common though? In an 11-year-old to find that in a body potentially?
Not, you don't always see that.
Okay. What other things did you find in Gannon's bodily tissues?
He also had hydrocodone in the liver tissue.
All right, so let's talk about hydrocodone. What is hydrocodone?
Hydrocodone is a narcotic analgesic. It's a drug used for pain, and that is also found in cough medications because it's supposed to suppress your cough.
Is hydrocodone a controlled substance?
Yes, you need a prescription for that.
So I can't just go to Walgreens without a prescription and buy hydrocodone?
Yes,
Is it indicated as highly addictive?
yes, you can be dependent on it.
What are the effects of hydrocodone on a human?
Depending on the dosage, you can initially become drowsy, lightheaded, dizziness. And if you take a higher dose, it could lead to respiratory depression, or you'll have problems breathing. You'll have lethargy, coma, and eventually death.
Was it unusual, in your opinion, to find hydrocodone in a child of 11 years old, like we did here in Gannon's death?
Yes, I found it unusual.
Is that because of all of those issues you just described?
Yes, and if it was for a cough, you would give something that didn't have the, narcotic analgesic in it.
Typically, people would not.
Yes, that wouldn't be the first line of choice.
Okay. May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Me?
Thank you for being here. This is very hard.
Go ahead, doctor. Thank you.
Cross-examination, Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Ignacio.
Good morning.
My name is Will Cook, and I'm a defense attorney in this case. I'm going to ask some follow-up questions. Were you able to tell the blunt head trauma injuries, the three on the top of the head you were discussing? Can you tell the jury if those were post-mortem or pre-mortem?
They were pre-mortem.
Pre-mortem. And by that, you mean before death?
Yes.
Okay. At one point during your investigation, were you kind of unsure whether the blunt force trauma had happened before or after Gannon had died?
No.
Okay. And the injuries that you noted in your report and during the autopsy, they would indicate that this was a violent death.
Yes,
Okay. Also, it looked like a lot of the injuries, the blunt force injuries, the sharp force injuries, it looks like it was just a random act, whereas there's no pattern to it. You have injuries to the head, you have injuries to the body. Some are deep, some are shallow. It indicates that this was a random attack, correct?
yes,
Okay. There was no pattern to it.
yes.
Would the blood force injuries, were they fatal by themselves?
Yes, they could be.
Okay. And you say the gunshot was fatal in and of itself as well?
Yes,
Okay. Did the bullet from the gunshot, I can't remember what you said, did it enter into the cranial vault?
it did not.
It did not. Okay. And the mechanism for death with the gunshot, it was that it severed the spinal cord or some vertebrae?
Yes.
Okay. And what would have been the mechanism for death with the blood force injuries? Would that have been bleeding or hemorrhaging in the brain? What would that have been?
Yes, there was hemorrhage in the brain.
Okay. When you're doing investigation and autopsies and looking at toxicology reports, did you go back or did your office or did you receive any information about whether Gannon had had a prescription for cough syrup or cough medicine that contained any hydrocodone?
No, I didn't inquire.
Okay. So it is possible that he could have had a medication or a prescription from a doctor to assist with the cough.
It's possible.
Okay. And if he had had a prescription for a opiate-based cough syrup or cough medicine, then it would follow that it would show up in his blood or his toxicology results.
Yes.
Okay. Could any of the injuries noted have happened? There's evidence that there was a suitcase that he was in. He was, the suitcase was thrown off an overpass of a highway near Pensacola. Is there any way that some of the injuries could have been caused by the impact of the suitcase hitting the ground?
Like which injuries?
The blunt force trauma injuries,
No, they were on the top of the
the
head.
top of the head.
No.
Okay. In a lot of injuries, doctor, you'll see stippling or powder burns on the skin where a bullet or a projectile will enter. Did you note any of that, any of those type of injuries on Mr. Gannon?
I didn't see any stippling, but
Okay.
it's also because of decomposition. I might not be able to see it.
And that was my next question. Would decomposition, even if it had originally been there, would it make that disappear or decay?
Maybe.
Maybe. So what I'm getting at is, were you able to make any type of conclusion as to the distance the gun was from the body when it was discharged?
No.
Okay. Were any of the sharp force injuries, were any of them in and of themselves fatal?
Because of the decomposition, I couldn't really tell. I mean, When I looked at the lungs, because I was thinking it would penetrate the lungs, I didn't see any injuries, but because there was decomposition, it was hard to see. So I couldn't really tell with the injuries that went into the chest cavity.
So I guess all you can say is it's possible. Is it possible that some or one or more of these sharp force injuries were fatal?
Yes, it could be fatal if left unattended.
Okay. And it looks like in your report, you look for organs, you remove some of them, you measure the contents of fluids in different organs and that sort of thing. It looks like in your report, it mentions that you couldn't find a pancreas. Is that because Gannon did not have a pancreas or because it had just decayed to the point of being able to identify it?
Yes, decomposition.
Composition. So a lot of this stuff, a lot of the organs and whatnot in Gannon, they had decayed to the point where you couldn't identify him anymore.
Yes.
Okay. And is that typical for a body that had the history of exposure to the elements?
Yes.
Okay. Just a moment, doctor. Oh, thank you.
Redirect.
Mr. Cook was just asking you some questions about the sharp force injuries. Do you remember those questions?
Yes.
And couldn't tell whether those could have been fatal on their own or not due to the decomposition.
Yes, but I think I said something I forgot. I couldn't tell, but then you could die from injuries into the chest cavity if left unattended.
Is that why you determined that the sharp force injuries were contributing factors to the death of Gannon Stauch?
Yes.
The fact that this body was put into a suitcase and thrown over a bridge, does that indicate to you that this was an attempt to hide this type of evidence, the evidence that we're finding from these injuries?
I think if you can lay a little bit of foundation about what expertise you might have in that regard.
Okay.
Let's try that first.
Yeah, sure. So doctor, when we're talking about investigations into deaths of persons, especially I guess in Florida where there's lots of waterways and that kind of thing, is it common to find bodies that have been disposed of into waterways or bayous or marshy areas in Florida?
Yes, we have had some deaths.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We have had some deaths found in bodies of water.
Is it typical in your expertise to find that a person may have been murdered in one place and then intentionally moved to another place like a waterway or bayou or marshy area to make it harder for authorities to find and examine the body?
Yes.
Okay. Was that apparent in this case? That a
Yes.
body had been moved some distance in mileage and then pitched over a bridge into a potentially marshy and watery area?
Yes.
And so does the fact that that occurred here indicate to you in your expert opinion that there was also the attempt to hide this body from authorities so it wouldn't be detected and examined to determine how this person died?
Yes.
Is that an intentional act?
Yes.
I would object.
Overruled.
You were asked by Mr. Cook about stippling. So let's talk and so the jury understands what stippling is. Is stippling essentially powder burns on the surface of skin that would be caused by somebody shooting a gun at somebody in close proximity to that skin?
Yes. Usually 2 inches to 2 feet from the skin. The gun would be 2 inches to 2 feet from the body. And so you would see the gunpowder leave marks, little pinpoint marks on the skin.
These powder burns, are these expelled out of the barrel of the firearm when it's fired?
Yes.
If somebody put a pillow between the gun and the victim, would that prevent stippling from appearing on skin?
Yes.
Did you, in your autopsy, also include a pillow and x-rays and find 2 bullets inside of that pillow?
Yes.
Mr. Cook started out by asking you about if these sharp force injuries and the blunt force injuries, if these appeared to be random acts. And I want to be clear, do you mean that these were just randomly happened to Gannon without somebody intentionally causing these injuries?
Can you repeat?
Yeah. Well, were these random injuries or did somebody intentionally cause these injuries to Gannon?
Oh, it was intentional.
Okay, so when we say the word random, when Mr. Cook was asking you that, you don't mean that these were randomly happening with no rhyme or reason as to who or might be causing these injuries?
Yes, because he said there was no pattern. So I said there's no pattern.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to drive towards. These were intentional acts, as you just testified to. They did, though, target specific areas of Gannon's body, correct? It's not like these were injuries to his lower legs or toes or feet, correct?
Yes.
And so were these targeted towards upper body area, head area, chest area?
Yes.
Does that indicate a person had an intentional desire to cause potentially fatal injuries to Gannon
Yes.
because of where they're targeting?
Yes.
Is it more fatal to cause somebody an injury to their lower leg or to their head?
More to the head.
Okay. And Gannon had lots of injuries to his head, is that right?
Yes.
In all of these injuries, are these all the injuries that you talked about? 18 sharp force injuries, 4 blunt force injuries, and a gunshot wound to the chin that ultimately killed Gannon. Are all these pre-mortem injuries, meaning they happened while Gannon was still alive?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Dr. Ignacio? Looks like we have a few. Counsel, retrieve those and approach, please.
In this state, the jury can also ask questions. So let's hear what they have to ask. Yes, Cheryl says, I love that they can ask questions. Same. Yes. A. Heinemann says, juror, why the hell did you do this, Letecia? Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Dr. Ignacio, can you determine how long the body has been decomposing? Do you know when the time of death was?
No.
And Dr. Ignacio, during the autopsy, was there evidence of any burns on the arms, burn marks, or bubbling of the skin?
I couldn't see that because of the decomposition.
And how long does Tylenol and hydrocodone stay detectable in the body?
Usually 12 hours after the body would already metabolize the drug and come out in the urine. So that the drug was already there at the time of death.
All right. I will allow reasonable follow-up as to those questions only. Mr. Allen?
So Dr. Ignacio, just so we're clear, when you say 12 hours for those things to metabolize in the body, if it hasn't completely, like the hydrocodone, had not completely metabolized and been expelled by the body, even if it's been an extended period of time, like in this case, you would still detect hydrocodone.
Yes, if you were alive and you would take hydrocodone, after 12 hours, we don't even test for drugs anymore because it's going to be out of the system. But when he died at that time, he had the hydrocodone. It was even able to metabolize because it converted to hydromorphone. So there's some time there, but the drug was still there because he died around that time.
When you say that the hydrocodone had started to metabolize, so that means, does that mean that the body has processed some of that hydrocodone, but not all of it at the time of death?
Yes, maybe before he died and he was attacked.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Cook?
Thank you. Doctor, when you were talking about the burning or bubbling of the skin, so there could have been burn marks or burn injuries on the arms, but due to decomposition, you would not be able to detect those any longer, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you get a sample to test for drugs, as in the case with Gannon here, where are you getting the sample from? Or is there still urine that can be captured from the bladder? I know they do that a lot of times in these toxicology tests. Or just tell the jury where you got these samples from.
Since he didn't have any more blood, it was all fluids, body fluids. We couldn't test that, so we take liver. So these levels are from the liver tissue.
Okay. And a lot of times in these types of investigations, you have a blood level and a urine level. And I've heard testimony before that a urine levels, they're not as accurate about time of ingestion and everything, and it's mostly byproducts. Would the samples that you got from the liver, would that be considered a blood level or a urine level test?
It's a liver tissue level.
Liver tissue level, okay. Which would indicate if it was to the liver, there had been some metabolism of the drugs that had already taken place by the body.
Yes, it was recovered in the liver.
Okay. Did you attempt to get samples from anywhere else?
Can't recall. I think
If you have your report, would that refresh your recollection?
we took liver tissue and spleen tissue, but they tested the liver.
Okay. And what is the significance, I'm sorry, of taking samples from the liver versus the spleen?
If you can't take from blood or urine, we take from the liver.
Okay.
So you can see there will be drugs in the liver too, and there might be levels for that. But with this case, because of the decomposition, it's hard to determine the values.
Okay. And I guess I asked a bad question and I apologize. When you're taking a sample from the spleen, why take it from the spleen as well as the liver?
Because you could also have drugs in the spleen. Blood flows through the spleen.
Okay. And would you expect to have the same results with a liver sample versus a spleen sample, or could there be differences?
It could be different.
All right. Thank you, doctor.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. You may step down. Ladies and gentlemen, we will take our morning recess at this point in time. Again, do not discuss the case among yourselves. Do not discuss the case with anyone else. And if we can have everyone back in the jury room at, say, 10:25, we should be able to start on time at that point. All rise for the jury, please.
Okay, so it's break time now until 20 past, I think they said, right? Okay, so that was very, very tough to hear. There was no warning at all that they're going to show any such pictures. I think the court pucked up big time by showing it. Glad we were able to block it out. So, yes. Also, Stephanie, no, please don't talk to my mods like that. No. My mods are my team, and we love our mods here. So thank you, mods, for everything that you're doing. They know how we roll here on Grizzly True Crime. So everyone, that was a lot to process. That was really terrible. I mean, the overkill. Ooh, the overkill, huh? I mean, 18 stab wounds, 4 lacerations from blunt force trauma, and a gunshot wound. And she actually tried to shoot him 3 times, but she missed twice. So I think those were found in the pillow, right? In the bag. Woo, and one through the jaw. But that was horrendous to hear. I don't think any of us were ready for that today. I'm glad that it's like 5 p.m. my time. Now it's 6 p.m. my time. If this was like 9 in the morning for me, oh my word. Are you guys okay? We really need our trigger bunny here. We need the trigger bunny. We need the trigger swine, trigger pig, everything, because that was rough. It made me really, really angry as well. I don't know about you. Okay, so I have prepared a little video of all sorts of things. Just hold on 1 second. I just want to find it for us. Yeah, this one. It's just uploading. Hold on 1 second.
Going to be in my heart, and I'm always going to.
Okay. So, what I have here is just, sorry for the sad picture now. It's a lot, okay? We're going to be here together for this trial the whole way through. So, thank you that we can be here together. I don't know if any of us could be watching this alone. Maria says, I'm late. Did someone say he was still alive? I saw people saying that. I think the defense is asking, they're trying to angle for that, right? No, because Dr. This doctor, Ignacio, said what killed him. So let's not go over that right now again. That was a lot. Thank you so much for that. So what I'm going to show you here, I've made I've clipped some videos together so that in the tea breaks, we can go over some of that content and maybe some things that to remind us of things, like some of the press conferences, some of the family statements at the time. Gannon wanted to be a YouTube gamer, and he'd actually already uploaded one video with his friend. So I had a little clip of that in my intro as well earlier. So
Hurt. And I'll see when I get back. And he's like, okay, Daddy, love you. And I'm going to finish watching Pokemon. I remember it like it was yesterday.
So these, one more time, these were the last words that Gannon said to his dad. His dad he worked for the National Guard, and he was deployed to go for training at the time when Letecia was alone with Gannon, with his little sister Lena, and with her daughter Harley. Right? Okay, so this is the last thing that Gannon said to him, or that he said to Gannon, sorry, Al Stauch said, you're always going to be in my heart, and I'll always be in your heart, and I'll see you when I get back. And he was like, okay, Daddy, love you. I'm going to finish watching Pokemon. I remember it was like it was yesterday.
You're always going to be in my heart, and I'm always going to be in your heart. And I'll see when I get back. And he's like, okay, Daddy, love you. And I'm going to finish watching Pokemon. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Hey guys, and today I'm about to play some Sonic Mania. Alright, let's do it. For our channels. We're going to be doing a lot of these together.
I've just clipped this from Gannon's YouTube channel because I don't want to show the other kid. I don't think that would be right now. It is available there on YouTube if you do want to watch it, but I've just clipped it so we could just see Gannon, okay? MP says, thank you also, mods. This is hard on all of us. You are so appreciated. That's so sweet. And yes, thank you to all the mods.
It is. You choosing Tails? Yes, I love Tails. He's my boy! Show it. What is it? Oh, I got Nickels and Debo.
It's just, showing he was 11 years old, you guys, when Letecia attacked him. That she's the one charged with murder on trial now. We're watching the Letecia Stauch trial. We're on week 2, day 5, morning session. Grandma Bunny says, Grizzly, please verify that she has no ability to get off with a straight not guilty verdict. I thought that's off the table. From my understanding, yes, she's pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. So I think the defense, that's what they're trying to prove, is that she was insane at the time of committing this crime. They're going with dissociative identity disorder, which is not insanity. by the way. They need to do their homework. You know what I mean? If they're going for insanity, that's not the way to go. One of the mental health professionals said that she was psychotic at the time of committing the crime. That goes more towards like, okay, trying to prove insanity. But what the defense is going for, yeah, they're already pucked up. And they're like, oh, it's from the DSM-4 or 5. Yeah, 5, dude. And like, do some more reading. Oh, my word. Okay.
There's niggles, our niggles. Whee! I believe I can fly. I believe. Nope. You can fall and crack your face open. Ding.
It is surveillance video.
I used to love that game. Gannon loved Sonic the Hedgehog. And so if you want to share blue hearts and little hedgehogs in the chat, just to show support, you know, for what we're here for. We're here for Gannon. We're here for his family. And no, I don't believe that Al and Landon were in the courtroom right now during that horrendous first bit of the morning session, which I'm glad they weren't, because that was very, very hard. So these are just some old clips. This is now about the surveillance footage that we've gone over before. If you haven't seen it on the playlist, we've analyzed it before. But it's interesting here to hear from the neighbor who went over the surveillance footage and how no one could see Gannon coming back home after Letecia had taken him, you know, she booked him off from school on January 27th on a Monday. And then, remember, she told that neighbor there was some kind of hashtag like trust the shadow going around during this case, because Letecia was telling her trust the shadow, that the shadow on the other side of the vehicle was Gannon. Am I understanding that correctly? That's what I got.
That could be at the heart of a child murder case, showing Gannon leaving with his stepmom Letecia. But according to neighbor Roderick Drayton, Gannon is nowhere to be seen when Letecia returns.
I watched the video. I could slow it down, speed it up. I know he didn't come home with her, so I knew something. She'd done something with him or to him.
Drayton started reviewing footage after a knock on the door from the FBI.
Just kept looking through video, hundreds of clips, until I found it.
From the start, as search teams scoured acres of land looking for Gannon, Letecia has maintained her innocence.
A little emotional.
Cassie Brown knows the family.
It's been really tough.
Her son was friends with Gannon. The two bonded over video games.
He really did love Sonic as much as everybody says.
Like many in the Lorison Ranch subdivision, they're showing their respects. Blue is the theme.
He's really a light. He's so happy and so loving.
Balloons and ribbons are hard to miss.
After hearing what happened today, it's like, it's just heartbreaking.
As a community prays for a family experiencing tremendous sorrow.
Crime Lab investigators spent several hours at the Stauch.
Okay, and I'm showing you this older clip too. It's pretty loud, huh? I really boosted that a lot. I boost everything as much as possible. So look at the blue lights that were in the neighborhood, and some people that have been in the chat and have emailed me saying that they still have their blue lights up, you know, in support for Gannon, especially during this trial and everything now, which I think is a very nice thing to do as well. So, but at the time, because Gannon's favorite color was blue, the whole neighborhood put up these blue lights so that they could help Gannon find his way home.
Family home this evening. They left around 9 o'clock tonight, though the El Paso County Sheriff's Office won't get specific about what they are looking for. Also, when District Attorney Dan May was confronted by reporters this afternoon, he would not specify why he paid a visit to the family home. The neighborhood has rallied around the Stauch family. This has been an area of intense search over the last week. Ribbons and porch lights here are blue, Gannon's favorite color. The latest public development is surveillance video from the next door neighbor. It appears to show Gannon getting into a pickup truck that the neighbor says belongs to the boy's stepmother, Letecia Stauch. The truck returns to the home without the boy about 4 hours later. Letecia has not responded to our request.
I just want to clarify this because I see people in the chat, you guys are debating with each other whether he returned home or not. He must have, because police believe that he was murdered in his bedroom that afternoon. So he must have gotten out on the other side, which is interesting. Not? You know, I'm saying that's interesting if she made him get out on the other side, because why? We didn't see it on the surveillance. We can't see him just getting out the car on the side where we can see it. But it was that morning when they left. And remember, she went to Petco twice. We've done all the map time and the probable cause affidavit and everything. She went to Petco twice that day, and a faraway one, okay, and then came home with him, right? Because he was murdered in his bedroom. And then she put him in the bag, in the car, took the car to the airport, got a rental vehicle, brought her husband home with that rental vehicle, went back to the airport, got her car, and then dumped his body in Douglas County. But then she went back to Douglas County on January 30th. And then she took that suitcase and moved him again. She put him in the car, rented a white van, put him in the white van, and then took a road trip to Florida with her daughter Harley. So there was, in the beginning stages of this case, a lot of speculation about him not coming home. Everyone thought she'd done something to him out there, like they left and he never came home. But he did, because there's so much evidence in his room that he was murdered in his room, right?
Request for comment. We do know that she told investigators she last saw Gannon at the home between 3:15 and 4 p.m. on the day he went missing. She said that he was planning on going to a friend's house. Meanwhile, Gannon's father and biological mother put out a video statement through the El Paso County Sheriff's Office.
And a kid just doesn't disappear and no one sees him. It's not how this works. So if you have anything that's credible, if you're afraid, don't worry about it. Imagine my son, how afraid he is. Imagine how afraid Gannon is. So please call, please write. If you need to have someone else to do it for you, please do. Because my son deserves to be here.
As of tonight, law enforcement has not announced any arrests or suspects, but the El Paso County Sheriff's Office says they are continuing to search for Gannon and that they've received 231 tips that they say they will vet with the hope of bringing Gannon home safely. In Colorado Springs tonight, I'm Ryan Harrow, 9 News.
Okay, so someone's saying, what if she killed him before they went to Petco? No, because, sorry, I'll take this off quickly. No, because we saw him on the surveillance getting in the vehicle. But when the vehicle came back, we couldn't just see him getting out of the vehicle. But there was a shadow under the car that it's very hard to see, though, based on the quality of the surveillance footage that was shared, because it was shared, I think, by someone filming their TV, right? So, but apparently he got out on the other side, and he must have gotten out because he was murdered in his room. So that's what I'm understanding there. Okay, let's see what else I got here. Do you guys remember this? Let me just see. We've only got 3 minutes left, but we can start watching it a little bit. This is Gannon's biological mom, his little sister, and his dad at the time when he was missing.
How do I describe my G-Man, my Gannon? Gannon's my hero. I love him so much. He's not only my hero, he has multiple people that call him his hero as well. He has so many family members that just look up to him at such a small age. He's full of life. He's happy. He's energetic. He loves sports. He loves Sonic. He loves going outside, playing with his friends, his sister, his neighbor, especially Braden. This neighborhood basically gives you a true example of who my son is. Everybody coming together, all the smiles that people have. This is why I have hope, because I feel it. This is Gannon truly speaking to our community. Gannon he loves blue, he loves Sonic, he's into coding, he loves riding his bicycle with a
She said he's into coding as well. Wow. Ronna says, did she leave Gannon in the truck while in Petco? Yes, and she was in all her lies, the phone calls that we heard on day 2 and 3 with Elle. She was saying, yes, I was in Petco, and she bought like 3 little outfits for dogs, from what I understand. But she was looking out the window the whole time to see that Gannon wasn't getting out the car and basically running away, like that he wasn't going to leave. And Elle was like, well, why would you think that? Because he never has. He doesn't just like get out the car and leave. So already that was also very interesting. So yeah, he was in the car.
sister, and I know that he's missing that right now. He holds his job as being Big Bubba very important, and for him not to be able to talk to his sisters has to be hurting him. This week has been awful. It's been more than a roller coaster ride. It's been more than emotional mess. I don't even have answers for my feelings other than I'm afraid. I'm afraid that I will never hear his voice, that I will never hear him run and say, "Mommy," that I'll never hear those corny jokes that he always tells every single day. He has to tell me a joke he looks forward to telling me something silly. And I'm afraid that I may never see that again or hear it.
Yeah. We've got another minute left before they come back to court. A lot of people asking why was he not with his mother. So his biological mom and dad had gotten divorced, and I think she lived on the East Coast. Yes, she lived South Carolina, right? From what I'm remembering, just from the map time. And so they lived apart, and Al got remarried. He married Letecia, and Gannon was staying with his mom for a while, and then he decided, well, between the parents, there was a bit of a custody battle going on. So he was going to stay for a while with his dad. I think his dad was also fighting, for full custody, as it often goes with divorced parents. So that's what I know for now. So I'm sure we'll find out.
I don't
more
want
as
to
we go
believe
along.
that, because that means that I'm giving up hope, and I'm not giving up hope because my son is full of hope. So I'm urging anyone that has any leads, credible leads, if you're too afraid because you know something, a kid just doesn't disappear and no one sees him. It's not how this works. So if you have anything that's credible, if you're afraid, don't worry about it. Imagine my son, how afraid he is. Imagine how afraid Gannon is. So please call, please write. If you need to have someone else to do it for you, please do. Because my son deserves to be here. He deserves to be here. Please call the El Paso Sheriff's County and let them know. And I thank you guys, the community, for what you've done. Because this is Gannon. This is who he is. And I thank you guys so much.
Okay. So Keep It Real says, I thought it was shared custody. From what I'm understanding, it was. I think it was. But there was a bit of a battle going on from what I'm understanding. And so he went to stay in Colorado with his dad, Letecia, his little sister, and Harley was also there. Okay. So they said they're going to be back at 20 past. So now they're 1 minute late. I'm always like, I like being punctual, I'm like, where are they now? So I'm still monitoring, just so you know. It's still here. This is what we're seeing right now. Yes, and someone was saying that you want to know motive. Well, we've been through the probable cause affidavit, which shows her Google search history. And if we look at her Google search history, she was very resentful towards Gannon's biological parents. She was first saying, find me a new husband, find me a husband with new kids, find me a military man, real military man, and all that kind of stuff. And then she was saying, parenting is supposed to be 4 people, not 1. And doing your nails is not looking after your kids. And is my stepson's biological mom going to send me a Valentine's card because I'm looking after her kids and all that kind of stuff. So she said she felt like a glorified nanny and all that kind of stuff. So she had a lot of resentment towards Gannon's biological parents. Yes. Okay. So if you are here, thank you so much for being here. And please like the video, even though we don't like the topic. I know the topic is hard. When you like a video, it's not to like the content, right? It's to like being here together with us and just to make sure the video gets seen by other Grizzlies who didn't know that we're live right now. I've never streamed a trial before on my channel. This is the first time. So thank you all for being here with me, because I don't think any of us could really watch this trial alone. I don't know if you feel like that. Some people said that, but I feel like that. Like, we need each other. Yes. Oh, they said 25 past. Is that so? Okay. They said 25 past the hour. Okay.
ECR 1358, People versus Letecia Stauch record should reflect the jury's not
Then
present
they're
in the
1 minute
courtroom. Is there
early.
anything we need to
Very
take up
nice.
outside the presence of the jury at this point in time? Prosecution? Defense? Okay, let's go ahead and bring him in.
Sarah, you can just tap the chat and slow it down yourself. If you just use your finger, it should be able to, you can do it at your own pace. We've already slowed it down a bit. Slow mode's already on. Okay, welcome back to court, everyone. Morning session after the tea break. Here we go. That's right, Angela. Not liking the content, liking the presentation of it.
All rise for the jury, please. Thank you. You may all be seated. Court will recall 20 CR 1358 People versus Letecia Stauch. Record should reflect the jury has returned to the courtroom. Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, we would recall Al Stauch.
All right, Mr. Stauch, if you would resume your seat in the witness stand, I will invite you that you're still under oath.
Okay, Al Stauch that's Gannon's dad, you guys.
Okay.
May I proceed, Your Honor? I don't know if there was something.
You may,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. Good morning, Mr. Stauch. How are you doing today?
Morning.
When you were previously on the stand, we talked with you about your woodworking. We saw some of the photos in the garage of that woodworking. Did you at one point suffer an injury as a result of your woodworking?
I did, yes, sir.
What
They're
was
not
that
showing
injury?
it.
I cut off the tip of my right pointer finger,
Your index finger?
my index finger, yes, sir.
When did that occur?
May of 2019, around that time frame.
Did you get any prescription medications to deal with pain from that injury?
I did.
What kind of prescriptions did you get?
I believe I would have, well, I had a ibuprofen prescription and then some sort of pain medicine, I think hydrocodone, some sort.
Was that hydrocodone, was that a prescription that you got from your doctor?
Yes, sir, directly related to the finger injury.
Where did you typically keep that hydrocodone in the house?
That one I typically, and the ibuprofen I kept next to my bed in my little nightstand type area.
Did you consume all of the hydrocodone when you had that prescription?
I did not. I believe I only took 1 or 2 of the pills. I don't take a lot of prescription medicine anyways, and the ibuprofen was enough for me to manage the pain.
Did you ever, did you or anybody else in the family prior to when Gannon went missing, would you ever give these hydrocodone pills to any of the kids in the family?
No, they were hidden in the drawer in that nightstand area, so only myself and possibly the defendant knew where they were.
Would you have ever given those to Gannon?
No, sir.
That's all I have for you. Thank you.
Cross-examination? No questions. Do the jurors have any questions regarding that part of Mr. Stauch's testimony? All right, thank you, sir. You may step down. All right, prosecution, call your next witness, please.
We're just checking in the hallway to see if she's out here yet, Judge.
Okay.
I think they put the witness camera off now. Probably to stay safe, right? From what they showed earlier.
Turn the camera back on now.
There we go. Okay, we got to get our little blocking thing
This
ready
time
in
we would
case.
Call Special Agent Andrew Cohen.
All right. Agent Cohen, if you would step forward and raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand.
Good morning, Mr. Cohen. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm fine. How are you?
Will you please introduce yourself to the jury and then spell your name for the record?
My name is Andrew Cohen, Cohen. I'm a special agent for the FBI.
How long have you been with the FBI?
Since 2014.
What are your duties with the FBI?
I'm assigned to a violent crime task force. I primarily investigate criminal enterprises, complex narcotics investigations, fugitive work, and other violations of federal law.
At some point, did you get involved with the investigation into the disappearance of Gannon Stauch?
I did.
What was your role and how did you get involved in that investigation?
Um, I was requested to assist the El Paso County Sheriff's Office shortly after Gannon was reported missing. My role at the FBI was the lead case agent for the FBI. So information that we obtained from search warrants or interviews or other data would be compiled and would eventually all come through me.
The fact that the investigation spans from Colorado through to Florida and then South Carolina, did having the FBI on board assist with that investigation and just the spread of the investigation?
It certainly did. The FBI has a lot of resources nationwide, and it's sometimes a little less complex for the FBI to arrange resources in other states than, say, it would be for the El Paso County Sheriff's Office locally.
When you said that you were the lead agent, what does that mean for the FBI to have a lead agent on a case?
I was assigned the responsibilities of that case, of maintaining the case file and of making the investigative decisions at the FBI.
Are you also serving as an advisory witness in this case?
Yes, I am.
Is that why you're sitting sort of behind us during testimony here?
That's correct.
Is it probable that you'll testify more than one time?
I think that's up to you.
Yes, it is. So, Agent Cohen, in your work as an FBI agent, is it typical for you to get involved in wiretaps?
I've been involved in several wiretap investigations throughout my career.
What does it mean to have a wiretap?
A wiretap, common language, is actually the interception of oral or electronic or wire communication. In essence, we're able to listen to phone calls or to view text messages as they're sent.
Tell the jury what the process is to gain access to listening to those types of things.
A wiretap is considered a very intrusive investigative method. It's not something that you can just do on any investigation or even at the start of any investigation. Quite frankly, it's the most intrusive technique law enforcement has, where we're listening to somebody's phone call in a scenario where you would think you'd have the highest expectation of privacy, talking on your phone in your own private setting. And not only are we receiving the communications of the person whose phone we've installed the wiretap on, but we're also intercepting communications of other people that would be in contact with that person. So in order to get a wiretap, it's a pretty lengthy process. We have to show to the court that there has been an exhaustion of all other techniques that could be used in investigation, and that other techniques wouldn't be effective. So in this particular investigation, we had done multiple search warrants. We had done GPS trackers on cars. We had done location on cell phones. We had done physical surveillance. We had conducted interviews. And we have to demonstrate not only to the court that this is a necessary technique and that it would be reasonable that we would collect evidence, but we also have to show that all that other stuff would no longer be effective in the investigation.
What would happen if you've got the wiretap set up, you've got the approval of the judge, and you start to hear something that is outside the scope of the investigation? What would somebody listening to the wiretap do?
Well, earlier I told you that the privacy of individuals is so important. And if we were listening to a wiretap, we have a set of instructions called minimization instructions that come with every wiretap. And part of those instructions, it tells investigators a certain set of rules that if we were to listen to things that weren't relevant to the investigation, that we can't really do that. We'd have to pause the listening for a certain period of time, and then we could pick it back up. Say it could be 30 seconds or a minute, but we'd pause that and then pick back up to see how the conversation was progressing.
Does that protect the information that you're gathering so that it's really only case-specific information as opposed to extraneous or other private information that might be discussed in other types of phone calls?
That's correct.
Was a wiretap method used in this particular investigation?
Yes, it was.
During the process of you being involved in obtaining wiretap authorization from a court, in your knowledge of the case, was it apparent that this particular defendant was switching the way that the person was communicating, meaning phone numbers or devices, that type of thing.
Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
Well, the defendant in this case had her original phone seized by law enforcement shortly after she reported Gannon to be missing. After that, she decided she was going to leave the state of Colorado, and she purchased a new phone at a Walmart with a different area code under a name of a person who may or may not really exist. It certainly wasn't her.
Was that purchase made in Trinidad, Colorado?
Yes, it was.
And then do you know this because of listening in on the wiretaps and seeing what numbers are being used, but also because of another investigative method that was being used in this case as well?
We had other investigative methods being used too. We had done search warrants for financial records for the defendant, and we found that one of those financial records was a purchase at a Walmart in Trinidad. Some further investigation led us to the purchase of that telephone.
And then we had Mr. Stauch on the stand the first day of testimony in this case, and we listened to some recorded phone calls, which I think we've articulated as pretextual phone calls. Is that another method that you were able to obtain that information that the defendant was using other phone numbers beyond the first phone that was seized by law enforcement?
Yes, it was. One of the common things that I've seen in my training experience as an FBI agent is that people who are involved in criminal activity oftentimes will change phone numbers or will download Wi-Fi only calling applications that allow them to have different phone numbers frequently, and it's mainly to avoid the detection of law enforcement.
Is that an intentional act by somebody that is being investigated?
Those applications don't self-install on a phone. Cell phones don't just show up in your car. So yes, those are all very intentional acts.
Okay. And then as you're doing these wiretap investigations or methods, are those phone calls actually recorded so you can listen to them later?
Yes, they are.
Is that what occurred in this case, that wiretap conversations were recorded that captured the defendant's voice?
They were.
Did you have actual physical contact with this particular defendant?
Yes, I did.
Were you familiar with her voice?
Yes, I was.
The person that you had physical contact with and you know as the defendant, is she present in the courtroom today?
She certainly is.
Will you identify her by where she is sitting and what she is wearing?
She's seated at the defense table. She's wearing a pink shirt and has long dark hair and currently has her hand on her chin.
Your Honor, that's that the record reflect that the witnesses identified the defendant.
The record will so reflect. Go ahead.
And how did you become familiar with the defendant's voice?
Through several aspects. I had reviewed body cam footage from when deputies originally responded to the defendant's home. I had listened to other phone calls she was involved in. I saw the defendant give interviews on the news, and ultimately I was present for her arrest.
And the pretextual phone calls that you were participating in, and then these wiretap phone calls that you were able to intercept, are all of those voices that are caught in these recordings the defendant's voice?
Yes, they are.
I may approach with 688, 689, 690, and 691.
You may.
Special Agent Cohen, I've got in my hands people exhibit 688. It's a disc. Do you recognize it?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
I reviewed this disc and I initialed the disc.
What does the disc contain?
This contains wiretap calls, recorded wiretap calls.
Does it indicate a time and date of this particular call?
This particular call is February 18th, 2020 at 10:14 in the morning.
The file that this disc contains, is it a fair and accurate representation of that particular phone call?
Yes, it is.
As it relates to 689, do you recognize this disc?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
I've also initialed this disc.
And what does this disc contain?
This contains a recorded phone call from the wiretap on February 18th, 2020 at 10:19 in the morning.
Is this file on this disk, is a fair and accurate representation of that particular phone call?
Yes, it is.
And then looking at 690, do you recognize this disk?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
I've also initialed this disk.
And what does this disk contain?
This contains a recorded wiretap call on February 18th, 2020 at 11:16 in the morning.
Does this file on this disk, is it a fair and accurate representation of that particular phone call?
Yes, it is.
And then looking at 691, do you recognize this disk?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
I've also initialed this disk.
What does this disk contain?
A recorded wiretap call on February 18th, 2020 at 2:47 in the afternoon.
Does it actually say 1447?
It does.
And that's 2:47 p.m.
Correct.
Is this file on this disk, is it a fair and accurate representation of that particular call?
Yes, it is.
All right, this time I've moved for admission of 688, 689, 690, and 691.
Mr. Tellini?
Your Honor, subject to the section I added in the prior hearing.
Council approach, please. All right, subject to the objection, the exhibits 688, 89, 90, and 91 are admitted. Go ahead.
And permission to publish, starting with 688, Judge.
You may.
Get ready, everyone. Trigger pick time. This should be interesting. February 18th, 2020.
And how can I help?
Yes, I didn't get any confirmation about my test I paid for.
And so just for reference sake, before we get too deep into the phone call, sounds like there's two voices.
That's correct.
Do you recognize one of the voices?
I do.
Is it the female voice?
Yes.
And whose voice is that?
That's the defendant's voice.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you, Angela.
Okay, can I have your name, please? I can check if we've got the order here.
Yes. Tisha, well, last name is Stauch, Stauch.
Okay, give me one moment, please. Let me have a little look. Okay, yeah, perfect. I can see that we've received that, and we have actually sent the test. Have you not received that yet?
Have what now?
We have already sent the results to your email account.
I don't have them. Mm-mm.
This is the fake polygraph test, guys.
Okay, let me try resending that, and if you don't receive it, give us a call back.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you now. Bye-bye.
So Special Agent Cohen, the phone number that, at the very beginning, let me back up. There, you can hear ringing. Does that indicate that this is a phone call that was initiated by the defendant to a particular place?
That's correct.
Were you able to investigate and determine who it was that she was calling?
I was.
What was the phone number that she was calling?
Objection foundation would be.
Mr. Allen?
I can lay some foundation, Judge. When a wiretap is obtained, does it record both the outgoing and receiving phone numbers?
As part of the overall wiretap in this investigation, we also installed something called a pen register trap and trace device. That particular device will record both the outgoing or incoming phone number from the subject telephone.
And so does that mean that the receiving phone, the person that is being dialed or a place that the originator is dialing would be caught in this trap and trace?
That's correct. It's identified as either an outgoing or incoming phone call, and we have the telephone numbers on both ends of that conversation.
And then were you able to look up that particular phone number that was dialed for this call and see it being associated with a particular web page?
Yes, I was.
What web page was that?
fakepolygraph.com.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
And is that what all of these phone calls are in relation to, is calls originated by the defendant to a purportedly fakepolygraph.com webpage.
That's correct.
Okay, let's jump into 689 and permission to publish 689, Judge.
You may go ahead.
Oh, we're going to hear more now.
May I help?
Hi, yes, I was just talking to you. Is there a way you confirm where you sent those? Because I still didn't get them.
Yeah, so I'm just going to get that resent for you. So if you wait for the next sort of 10, 15 minutes and let me know if you haven't received it by then.
I was saying, can you check the email? Because I just want to make sure.
Okay, yeah, give me a moment.
Look at her. She looks so embarrassed right now. Or asleep. I'm not sure which one, actually.
Spelled TECIALYNN2006 @yahoo.com.
Okay, cool. So you said like 10, 15 minutes?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
In that particular phone call, did it sound like there was an email address that was confirmed to the defendant?
Yes.
What was that email address?
It was Tisha Lynn at 2000. I can't remember the exact address, but it was an address that we knew to be associated to the defendant.
Okay, and that's what sounds like an English speaking person relayed, and then the defendant acknowledged that as being the correct email address.
That's correct.
Okay, and then 690, permission to publish, Arm.
You may go ahead.
Yes, they actually blocked her.
Hello, how can I help?
Hi, yes, I'm calling again. I still didn't get that email.
Okay, can I ask your name, please?
It's last name Stauch, S-T-A.
Ah, right, yes, perfect. I can see here.
It's about 10, 15 minutes, and you said it again. I still don't have it.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, it's actually been blocked by management, this order, due to the content of the questions. So we're not going to be able to send this report.
Okay, so do I get my money back?
Unfortunately, not on this case, no. Obviously, due to our terms and conditions, it does clearly state that any sort of illegal activities or anything like that, obviously the management do reserve the right not to send the report. Obviously, we do incur processing fees, so that's why a refund wouldn't be due.
So what do you do now? Just delete it and go on about life and keep money?
Yes, we would do indeed.
I got you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now. Bye-bye.
She's like, I got you. Thank you.
In that particular call, is it essentially being communicated that a polygraph result is not going to be provided because it's associated with the illegal activity?
Is leading and further the jury has heard only their own determination.
Sustained on second grounds, jury can make their own determination.
Okay, and then permission to publish 691.
You may go ahead.
Hi, how can I help?
Hi, did it hang up?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I can hear you now. How can I help you?
Okay. I talked to you earlier and you said that the request I did was blocked or something, but I looked on the terms and conditions and it says you can't say things about like infidelity and stuff like that. So I'm not sure how that was blocked.
So that again, sorry, that you can or can't?
No, okay, so I did a report earlier and you said you would send it to me. Then when I called back, you said it was blocked, that I wasn't allowed to get the report. But then I clicked the terms and conditions and it says you can do questions about infidelity and stuff like that.
Yes, infidelity you can, correct.
Right, and that's what I did.
Your report was about infidelity, was it?
What did you say?
So you're saying your report was about infidelity?
Yeah, like I put questions in for it, and you had to select answers. And you said something about it being blocked.
Yes. So what were your questions?
So it was about during the time that we were away inside of in another state that I talked to, and I gave the person's individual's name, Ortega. That was one of them. Then it said, "Are your eyes blue?"
No,
And I
she's
did
lying.
a couple of the questions that were on the bottom.
Lies, all lies.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure in that case. Unfortunately, that's not what came through.
Yeah, it's like that's not what came through. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's happened there then.
Because I read that you can do this. Yeah, it says on there that you can do that.
Yeah, you would be able to about infidelity, but the questions that were submitted for your order were not to do with infidelity.
Yeah, I didn't submit questions that were not to do with
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
Okay. All right. See, well, I'll have to look into that then in that case.
Do you want me just to write you the questions down?
No, it's okay. I'll just need to have a look into this then to see what can be done.
Okay.
Just remind me again, what was the name on the report?
It was Stauch, Stauch.
Uh-huh. And that's your surname, is it? Your last name?
Yes.
Okay. And first name is?
Tecia.
Okay. And how do I spell that?
It's Tecia.
Tecia.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Okay. All righty. Well, let me have a look into that and I can come back to you.
Okay. Thank you.
What's the best number to get you on?
843
Mm-hmm.
798
Uh-huh.
1700.
Okay. Right. Thanks a lot now. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Special Agent Cohen, these phone calls are from February 18th, as you've testified. Were you aware also at this same time that that's when these pretext calls were being recorded involving Al Stauch and the defendant?
Yes, I was.
Were there phone calls during that time with those pretext calls in which the defendant was talking about getting a polygraph examination?
Yes, she was.
What was she trying to convince the listener, I guess Al Stauch, of during those conversations?
Objection, speculation, as
Sustained. I think you can rephrase and refer back to the conversation, but I think it's up to the jury to make a determination about what the defendant's state of mind was during the
Sure,
conversation.
I understand, Judge. What was she saying to Al as it relates to the polygraph?
She was saying that she had passed a polygraph test, and she was continuing to prove her innocence, and that she had nothing to do with Gannon's disappearance.
Passed a polygraph as it relates to what?
Whether she had anything to do with Gannon's disappearance.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Cross-examination, Mr. Cellini.
I don't have any questions for Agent Cohen at this point.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Agent Cohen? Thank you, sir. You may step down.
Thank you.
Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
Okay, I'm just quickly finding that. I'll find the questions again that she asked, okay?
We would call Christina Cervantez.
Last name again?
Cervantez?
Cervantez.
Yep, it's spelled Cervantez, I believe.
Sorry, I need to write faster, don't I? Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand. Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Your Honor. Will you please introduce yourself to the jury and then spell your name for the record?
My name is Christina Cervantez, Christina. Last name Cer. V as in Victor, A-N as in Nora, T as in Tom, E as in Edward, Z as in zebra.
Do you need a glass of water?
Yes, please.
There's a water pitcher there.
And be careful when you unscrew the lid because it comes out fast when you do that.
You have to turn it just a quarter turn roughly, I think. It happens to all of us. Don't worry about it. What is your current occupation?
My current occupation is crime lab specialist with the Texas Department of Public Safety in Texas.
Did you used to work for the sheriff's office here in El Paso County?
Correct.
What was your occupation with this sheriff's office?
Evidence technician.
What were your duties associated with being an evidence technician?
My duties were to intake evidence as it was collected from the scenes, from the officers as well. We also responded to calls when we had evidence to collect from those scenes. We also received phone calls from the public in reference to getting their property back.
And what were your dates of employment with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office?
I was employed with El Paso County Sheriff's Office from 2015, and I believe that was August of 2015 to January of 2022.
Okay. Were you working in January, February timeframe of 2020 for the sheriff's office?
That is correct.
In that same evidence technician role?
Correct.
You mentioned that sometimes you would get calls from people in the public. What were those calls typically in relation to?
Typically, they were the public wanting their property back. Anytime we had evidence collected, the person would call oftentimes and ask for their property to be returned to them.
Would that happen fairly regularly?
Yes, sir.
And when they're asking for property to be released back to them, is this property that might be held for either a criminal investigation or even a civil matter?
That is correct.
What would be the, I guess, the protocol on a civil matter if there's some property that's held by the sheriff's office and it's a civil issue?
So if it's property that is held within a civil matter, usually we would have to get authorizations from the detectives in charge, letting us know what we could release, what we couldn't. Oftentimes, if there was an authorization from the court stating, hey, you can release this, it usually was signed by a judge, we could release it that way as well. But we always have to have that authorization in place before we could release it.
What was the protocol in place as it relates to any evidence or property that's held on a criminal matter?
On a criminal matter, usually until the case was completed and we got the proper authorizations, till those were received, we could not release it until that time.
Okay. As it relates to this time frame, do you remember working on February 12th, 2020? And I know this is over 3 years away, but do you remember working at that time at the sheriff's office as an evidence tech?
Yes.
Do you remember getting phone calls as it relates to the Gannon Stauch / Letecia Stauch investigation?
Yes.
What were the nature of those phone calls that you were receiving in the evidence area for the sheriff's office?
So the nature of the phone calls could range from callers calling in saying they would like certain items of evidence back. From what I can recall, on several occasions, I had received phone calls in reference to property belonging to Mrs. Stauch.
Okay, so just so that we're all understanding, did you receive some calls in which the caller identified themselves as Letecia Stauch?
Not that I recall.
Okay. So had you had a chance to hear Letecia Stauch's voice prior to these phone calls coming in?
At one point, I did recall her coming into the lobby area at one point.
Okay. So what do you remember about that particular occasion?
I just remember her coming in and asking for her property back. And at that time, I told her I didn't need to get in contact with the lead investigator to make sure it was something that we could, in fact, release to her.
Okay. So you had a direct person-to-person interaction with her.
That is correct.
Did you hear her voice during that interaction?
Yes.
And do you see that same person here in the courtroom?
Yes.
Will you identify her for the jury, pointing to where she's sitting, and describe her clothing?
She is wearing a pink sweater, dark hair, long dark hair.
Your Honor, ask that the record reflect she's identified the defendant.
Record will also reflect. Go ahead.
And then did you get phone calls after that interaction with that same voice from the defendant?
Yes.
In a particular phone call, did you get a phone call from that defendant where she purported to be somebody different?
From what I can recall, yes.
Do you remember who it was that she was purporting to be at that time?
At that time, when I first got that call, the voice, it sounded like her, but claiming to be her daughter.
Okay. And when we were using the word her there, you mean her, the defendant?
Correct.
The voice sounded like the defendant, but was claiming to be her daughter?
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach with People's Exhibit 280?
You may.
Showing you what's marked as People's Exhibit 280. Is this a recording of that phone call that occurred on February 12th, 2020?
Yes.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of that phone call?
Yes.
Okay. Move for admission of People's Exhibit 280.
Commissioner Board Honor?
On the exhibit?
Yes.
Yes.
So somebody called and they identified themselves as Harley Hunt.
Correct.
Have you ever spoken in person to Ms. Hunt?
Before?
Yes, before the phone call.
Yes. If what I can recall from 3 years ago, I remember her coming into the lobby area.
Miss Stauch or her daughter?
Mrs. Stauch.
Okay. Had you ever spoken to her daughter in person?
No.
So you don't have a foundation as what her daughter's voice sounded like
No.
and how much her daughter's voice may sound like hers?
No, sir.
I'd object to the foundation.
Overruled. I think it goes to weight, not admissibility. You can
So-
go ahead and publish.
Okay, so I had moved for admit, and I think you just need to formally admit it into evidence, Judge.
Exhibit 280 will be admitted.
Okay, and then permission to publish this particular recording.
You may go ahead.
Office evidence, this is Chris. Yes, I was
So that first voice that we hear, is that your voice?
Correct.
And then that second voice, whose voice is that? Based on your knowledge,
Based on my knowledge, Mrs. Stauch's.
the defendant.
Correct.
Okay.
earlier. I think you might have been busy or something, so I waited to call back for a little bit. It's okay. Sorry. What time did you call? I just called you like maybe 15, 20 minutes ago, and you said, hold on. No, that wasn't, there's four of us working here, so that wasn't me. Yeah. I was like, oh, I don't recognize your voice. You were busy. Okay, so I'm trying to find out about some contents of mine that was in a car. So my book bag, which had a lot of my social security card, birth certificates and stuff that was in a car that's still impounded. And I just want to know, they gave me the purse one day out of it, but how can I get the book bag? And I need my MacBook for school. Your MacBook, okay. What is your name? Harley Hunt. Harley Hunt. And do you have a case number so I can look it up? Let's see this. I have this paper. It says agency number. Is that it? Or I have a VIN number? It should be agency. Agency number? All right. 2020 1382.
All right. Let's take a look here. Excuse me. Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you. You said it's a book bag?
There's a black and white book bag that was in the back seat of the white Jetta. And it has like my passport, my social, my birth certificate, my dog paperwork, my MacBook.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, there's like there was a one blue bag that had a MacBook in it. And then there was a black and white book bag, and there was like my diamond rings are in it. And then there's a pink folder that had like my birth certificate and all that in it.
Okay. Let's see here.
Like I understand they might still be holding the car, but like I can't like even like work or anything without having my passport because I'm a flight attendant and.
Okay. And you said your name was Carly Hunt, is that correct?
Harley Hunt.
Harley Hunt. Okay, Harley. Well, I can tell you right now, everything on this case is evidence. So because it's evidence, I cannot release it back to you without written authorization from basically a higher authority. They have not given us any written authorizations to release. So unfortunately, what you may want to do is contact the detective on this case. Have you been in contact with anybody?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let me go ahead and get the lead detective's number for you, and you can call them in reference to this. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Hold on just 1 second.
Okay.
Definitely Stefan. She's blocked here too.
Yeah.
Thanks, Angela.
Okay, Harley? Yeah. Okay, so that's going to be Detective Bethel. Okay. And her desk number is going to be 520-7291.
Okay.
Okay,
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Why does she do that voice? That's so creepy.
Ms. Cervantez, did it seem odd to you also, the comment about it being a flight attendant?
I'm sorry, repeat the question?
Yeah, did it seem odd to you when the caller requesting the information back, I guess, relayed to you that they were a flight attendant?
Yes.
Overruled.
What was odd about that?
Just the fact that her daughter being young, the age, I thought found it odd to be that age and a flight attendant.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's all I have.
Cross-examination.
No question.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Ms. Cervantes? No? All right. Thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you.
Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
Called Detective Michael Bauman.
Detective, if you would step forward and raise your right hand, please, sir. You swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand.
Good morning, Detective. Will you please introduce yourself to our jury and then spell your name for the record?
Good morning. My name is Michael Bauman, Bauman,
Detective, who are you employed by?
the El Paso County Sheriff's Office.
What do you do for the sheriff's office?
I'm a digital forensics detective.
What are your duties associated with that position?
Basically, my job is to find and preserve data that may be evidentiary of nature on electronic devices.
What kind of electronic devices do you typically work with?
Computers, cell phones, DVRs, things like that.
And then is there a particular device that helps you get data off of these other electronic data points?
Yes, sir. We have a number of devices that we use. For instance, with computers, we use a software and hardware combination called Celebrite. We also use something called Gray Key, which is for extracting data from phones. For computers, we use Axiom and kind of beefed up computer workstations.
Tell the jury what Celebrite is. You mentioned it.
Celebrate is basically a combination of hardware and software. It is it's a little device that plugs into the USB on your computer, and then you can plug phones into that and so forth and extract data from the phones. And then Celebrite has a second function, which it actually goes through that data and turns it into something that's readable and sortable and so forth.
Do you have particular training that allows you to use that particular, is it a device or what is it?
It's a device, it's a combination of hardware and software.
Do you have training that allows you to use that?
Yes, sir.
What does that training consist of?
Well, I have 3 different certifications with Celebrite, and basically 3 levels. The highest level is Celebrite Advanced Smartphone Analysis. It's just basically each one was the first 2 together were a week long, and then the CASA, the smartphone analysis one, was also a week long. That specifically dealt with using that tool. Basically, it's a hands-on program that you go and county spends a lot of money, and I sit there and learn how to use the machine, basically, and get an idea of what it's doing. So,
tell the jury about what the process would be like if I handed you a phone to use with this device. What process would you go through to obtain the data from that phone?
So effectively, if we know, for instance, we know the passcode, we'll use that as an example. We'll take that phone. We will, you set the phone up by enabling developer options and things like that. If it's Android, if it's iPhone, it's different. If it's iPhone, you just tell it to stay awake, basically. Then you plug the phone into the Celebrite UFED device, which is the little thing I talked about that you plug into your computer. And then you go through the steps on the screen that allows the phone, and you're interacting with the phone and the computer to set up permissions so that you can download data off the phone.
So basically selecting what data you want to extract from that phone?
Well, I mean, yes, what you're really doing is setting up the computer and the phone so that they can talk to each other. Generally, we do, I don't want to go too deep in the nerd world for you, but we use an application programming interface, Celebrite, which is kind of like a translator. It allows Celebrite to speak to computer, right? And so, iOS is talking to Windows at that point, so that it can say, okay, this is the data that you can pull off of the phone. And so that's kind of how that works. And so then it pulls the data off the phone. We then use the physical analyzer software to parse through that data and find the files that are in there.
What kind of things do you typically extract from a person's cell phone?
It depends on the phone, but oftentimes we extract pictures, text messages, instant messages, internet search histories, activity data, locations, all those types of things.
What do you do with that information when you extract it? You put it on a disk?
Yes, sir. We'll take that information, run it through Physical Analyzer, and then we'll take and create what we call a Celebrite report. And that Celebrite report is basically a standalone piece of software that puts all that data into something that you can categorize and search and let me look at these time frames, or let me search for these keywords in the extraction of the data we were able to pull.
Is it typical that you obtain these phones that you use this device on comes from some other detective that's involved in an investigation?
Yes, sir, generally.
Will that detective generally give you some guidance as to what they might want off of that phone if you can obtain it?
Sometimes, frankly, again, I don't want to go too deep in the weeds but Celebrite's able to parse about 400 out of 4 million applications. Now that was a couple of years old, those numbers. So I generally try to pull as much as I can, and then I allow the detective to take and based on the scope of their warrant or their waiver, they go through that data and find out what's pertinent to their case, since I don't know the case like they do.
Okay, so you're kind of leading into the next area that I wanted to go into. Once you put this stuff into a Celebrite report, as you described, put it onto a disk, does that then make it accessible to other detectives in the investigation to use for whatever investigative purpose they may or may not have?
Yes, sir. So once we've done that, we'll turn that over to whatever team is going to examine the device, and they'll go through and say, okay, we need to find all the messages that may contain the word John. So they'll go through and search for those things, or whatever might be the case in their actual investigation.
Would they do that separate from working hand in hand with you? They would do it on their own?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Are there other people with the sheriff's office that have training in being able to use the Celebrite device to obtain data off of phones or other devices?
Well, through attrition, no, currently I'm the only digital forensics detective with those certifications, or at least with current certifications.
Okay. Let's go back in time to January, February timeframe of 2020. Were you working at the sheriff's office back then?
Yes, sir.
Did you get involved in the investigation into the disappearance of Gannon Stauch?
Yes, sir.
What was your role in that investigation?
Again, basically what we just talked about. I was a digital forensics investigator dealing with DVR, computers, phones, etc.
Did you have an occasion to use Celebrite on 2 separate devices in that investigation?
Yes, sir.
When you get a device, like in this particular investigation that we're talking about, do you necessarily know who that particular device belongs to?
No.
So what information do you pay attention to make sure that the data that you extract from a device is assigned to that particular cell phone or whatever it might be?
Well, primarily the first thing we do is try to keep things separated, but I generally try to look at like IMEIs, the identifying numbers in the phone, That's generally how I try to identify which phone goes with which extraction, things like that.
When you said that kind of quickly, the court reporter looked at you. Did you say IMEI?
Yes, ma'am. IMEI.
Okay.
Sorry.
So is that an unique identifier that's assigned to your cell phones?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's talk about, did you have a chance to look at a rose gold iPhone 8 in this case?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, may I approach with People's Exhibit 222?
You may.
If you could just look over People's Exhibit 222, and when you're done looking it over, will you let me know?
I'm done.
Okay. Do you recognize People's Exhibit 222?
I do, sir.
What does it purport to be?
This is actually a Blu-ray disc containing a Celebrite of, I annotated it as Tisha's iPhone.
Okay. And when you do the Celebrite download, do you get the IMEI number? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to obtain phone number associated with a particular phone when you do the Celebrite?
Depends.
Okay.
At times we'll do an extraction with it just depends on the extraction.
Okay. Do you remember for this particular one, if you're able to get the phone number in the report for this particular iPhone?
I don't recall. I can look at my my report and see if that refreshes my memory.
Would that refresh your memory to look at your report?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, may he refresh his memory with his report?
You may go ahead.
Thank you.
Do you have it up there with you?
I have, yes, sir.
Okay.
And so that the record's clear, you're asking for the phone number that's identified with this Celebrite extraction, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Excuse me just a second here while I pull out my Papa glasses. Yes, sir. I believe I have that here.
Okay. What was the number associated with that particular iPhone?
843-6557-460.
Okay. 843-655-7460. Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. When you do an examination on a phone with this Celebrite process, do you examine the phone for any physical damage?
Yes, sir. Generally, I'll look at the phone and see if the screen is cracked. I'll try to annotate those things in the report.
What's the purpose of that?
Well, there's multiple purposes. One is that we want to make sure that the device functions, so we're able to actually manipulate it to do the download. The other thing is we also want to make sure that we're showing the state of the phone when we receive it, so that down the road we can show that the phone's still in that same condition, that we didn't damage the phone or something.
Okay. Did this particular phone have any physical damage or defects?
Do you mind if I look at my report?
Would that refresh your memory?
Yes, sir.
May you refresh his memory with his report, Your Honor?
You may go ahead.
Thank you. I noted in the report that I observed no major defects on the device.
Okay. And then did you in fact perform a Celebrite extraction of that particular phone?
Yes, sir.
Is that extraction on People's Exhibit 222 that's in the envelope in front of you?
Yes, sir.
I move for admission of People's Exhibit 222.
Defense?
Subject to objection raised in prior hearing.
Right. The objection's overruled. The exhibit
222.
22 will be admitted. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I approach with 224?
You may go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Swap you out.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Have you had a chance to look over People's Exhibit 224?
Yes, sir.
What does it purport to be?
This is again, a Blu-ray disc with a Celebrite of item number 671, which was an iPhone.
And when you examined this particular iPhone, did you have any contextual information about who this iPhone belonged to, where it came from, anything like that?
I I don't recall. Actually, I may have heard that this was Tisha's other phone. I don't recall.
Okay. Was this by chance a phone that was seized in South Carolina from the defendant?
Yeah, that was my understanding. Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember, were you able to get the same kind of identifying information, IMEI, like you mentioned earlier, on this phone?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if you were able to get a phone number associated with this particular phone?
I believe we were. Yes.
Okay. Do you remember off the top of your head what that phone number might have been?
I would have to refer to the report.
Would that refresh your memory if it's in there?
It would.
Okay. May he refresh his memory, Your Honor.
May go ahead.
Thank you.
Getting your glasses out again?
Yeah, either that or you'll have to hold it so I can see it further away like that. Sorry.
Your arms aren't quite long enough anymore?
No, sir, they've gotten shorter, I think. Let's see.
Thank you, Ange.
Okay. The phone number associated with this phone is 843-798-1700, 1700.
Okay. Did you do a physical examination of this phone as well to look for any damage or defects?
I believe so.
You believe so, or you did, or
Yeah,
didn't?
yeah, I did. That was a
Okay.
matter. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember what the results were. We'll say that. So,
Okay. Would it refresh your memory to look at your
would.
report? May he refresh his memory.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Actually, it looks like I didn't actually note on this one that any damage, which would indicate to me probably wasn't any damage, but I didn't actually specifically note it in the report.
That's fine. Just so that we're very clear though, did you say was or was not any damage?
I'm assuming there wasn't. I think I would have noted it if there was. However,
Okay.
I didn't specifically note it.
Okay. And then did you actually go ahead and perform the celebrite extraction on that particular device as well?
Yes, sir.
Similar to the last device that we just talked about, did you place that on the disk and that's what's in People's Exhibit 224?
Yes, sir.
All right, move for admission of People's 224.
That's
Same objection.
overruled. Exhibit 224 will be admitted.
Okay. For these particular two devices, did you do anything beyond extracting and putting them on disk and admitting into evidence?
There were a team of us that that kind of looked through things. I don't recall if there was anything specifically that I did that somebody else didn't do as well that wouldn't have been annotated by them.
Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure. That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Mr. Polini.
Detective, how are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Sorry. So just so I understand, if somebody gives you a phone, then you hook it up to the Cellbrite, and the Cellbrite basically takes everything off of it it can, and that's put in a disk for the detective then to go through.
Effectively, there's kind of an intermediate step where we use that other software. There's the UFED software which actually pulls the information, and then the physical analyzer software is a second piece of software that actually goes through that information and turns it into something that people can read. And then I create the report from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as like the information that is being taken from the cell phone by Cellbrite, that's not contained by any dates or any other parameters. That would be up to the detective who does the search.
Correct, because Cellbrite doesn't, it would be kind of like if you had a self-driving car and you only taught it to recognize stop signs. You wouldn't want to trust that car to drive you around town because it doesn't know the rest of it, right?
Sure.
And so Cellbrite knows 400 out of 4 million applications that it knows how to sort through. So we pull as much as we can so that we have the ability, if we need to manually sort through the other things, if that makes any sense.
So, I mean, the Cellbrite will basically pull years and years. If I've had a cell phone for 5 years, it would literally, it possibly pull 5 years worth of text messages.
Maybe more. If you had pulled that information, if you had pulled information from another device over to your
Okay.
phone at some point, you say you're all the way back to well, whatever, whenever Android started, so, so yeah, that's how that would work. So,
Okay. Thank you, Detective.
absolutely.
Redirect. Do any of the jurors have any questions for Detective Bauman? No? All right. Thank you, sir. You may step down.
Thank you very much.
Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
Yes, Sergeant Kurt Smith.
Sergeant Kirk Smith up next. Thank you for being here. Please do like the video and share it so others know where to find us. I've never covered a trial before, so they might not even know I'm doing it. They said what? Sergeant Kirk Smith.
Sergeant Smith, if you would step forward and raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you swear affirm the testimony about to give this will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand.
You all situated?
Yes, sir.
Good. Good afternoon, or good morning, I should say. Will you please introduce yourself to the jury and then spell your name for the record?
My name is Kurt Smith, Kurtsmith, and I'm a sergeant with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been with the sheriff's office?
Since 2006.
What is your current assignment with the sheriff's office?
I'm currently the sergeant of the Major Crimes Unit.
What are your duties associated with that assignment?
We investigate homicides, officer-involved shootings, kidnappings, major felonies. I currently oversee 7 detectives who lead those investigations.
So that jumps into what I was going to ask about specifically as a sergeant, what do you do? And is it basically overseeing those detectives in their investigative efforts?
Yes, we manage their caseload. We manage and keep track of how the case is going, making sure it's thorough, accurate, making sure that all the leads are being followed up on, and making sure that they have the resources that they need to do their job.
What was your assignment with the sheriff's office back in January 2020?
I was the Special Victims Unit Sergeant, so I worked in the same investigation division, but I supervised 6 detectives who were doing crimes against children, things like that.
Did you get involved with the investigation into Gannon Stauch and him being missing?
Yes, sir.
How did you get involved in that investigation?
I was assigned to do several tasks. Obviously, it was a large investigation, so everybody within the division was assigned to a task or 2 at the time.
At some point, did you have get assigned a task to perform or celebrate extraction of a particular cell phone?
Yes, sir.
What kind of training do you have that allowed you to do that celebrate extraction?
In 2014, I was transferred to the investigation division as a detective. During that time period, I was trained how to do operate the celebrate equipment. Since that time, I've done about 75 roughly downloads of cell phones.
Describe, and I don't need you to go into as much depth as we did with the last witness because we just talked about the same concept, but describe what that process looks like when you are trying to extract data from a cell phone from your perspective.
So you would plug in a phone to get a charge. You would plug the phone into the Celebrate machine. You go through and you have several options of different extractions that you could do. And basically it creates an image of the phone. So it's basically like creating a copy of that phone that goes in the computer, and then the Celebrate software will decode it, for a better word, and give you a report of what's on the phone itself.
What do you do with the information once you extract it from a phone?
The phone is it's generated into a report that's readable. It's usually a PDF or a couple different fonts or formats. That I burn to a disk and I place into evidence. I also give a copy to the detective so they can go through and look at the phone and see what's on it.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach with People's Exhibit 227?
You may.
If you would look at People's 227 and let me know when you're done.
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize 227?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
It's a Blu-ray disc. It's item number 45 inside of an envelope.
What does the Blu-ray disc contain?
The Blu-ray contains the Celebrate report for the phone that I did.
Do you know which particular phone this was?
It was an iPhone 6, but I can't tell you whose phone it was, sir.
Okay. On the evidence label, does it give you some identifying information about the particular phone?
Yes, sir. It says it's the kid's phone.
He's reading off the evidence label, Your Honor.
Overruled.
What does it specifically say? If you could just read it.
Says Blu-ray containing Celebrite report from kid's phone, iPhone 6.
Okay. Does that just then contain the Celebrite of that iPhone 6 that you did a Celebrite download on?
Yes, sir.
Is it a fair and accurate copy of that Celebrite report?
Yes, sir.
And move for admission of People's Exhibit 227.
Exhibit 227 will be admitted.
Similar to what we just talked about with the last detective that was on the stand, once it's on that disk and downloaded from the phone, is that then accessible for the greater investigation if detectives want to access it to maybe search for specific things that might have been contained on that phone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was that the case with this particular disk?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Cross-examination, Mr. Tilley. Do any of the jurors have any questions for Sergeant Smith? No? All right. Thank you, Sergeant. You may step down.
Judge, if we may approach.
You may.
Oh, do you want to go? I was going to do it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Andrea says, I'm forcing myself out the door to run errands. Nice. Go do your errands.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you have seen a number of conferences up here, and you're not going to be surprised. But we were talking about a break for this morning. Trials are dicey things. Sometimes witnesses go a lot faster than you think they're going to, and sometimes they take a lot longer than you think you're going to. So the downside here is that we have some time that we're not going to be able to use. But what we're going to do is have you come back from lunch early. So we'll have you come back at 1 o'clock. And we should be able to start right on time at that point. Again, don't discuss the case among yourselves. Don't discuss the case with anyone else. Don't do any independent research about any aspect of this case. And we'll see you back at 1 o'clock then. All rise for the jury, please.
I just want to hear if there's anything else they say after this. Then I'm quickly going to show you the questions that Letecia Stauch actually asked on fakepolygraph.com. Then we're going to take a break too, and then the next session will be the afternoon session. We all need to stretch our legs, you know?
Thank you. You may all be seated. Record should reflect the jury has left the courtroom.
Thanks, Eddie.
Is there anything else we need to take up at this point in time? Prosecution?
No, you are.
Defense?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll see everybody back at 1 o'clock then. Thank you.
All rise.
Okay, back at 1 o'clock. Then we're going to take this banner off. There we go. All right. So we're going to leave that webinar. Just hold on 1 second. I've got it for you here. Firstly, this is where Letecia, she went to this website, and it was on February 18th that we heard now in the testimony that she was calling the company like, hello, I don't have the results yet. So it's literally, it exists, okay? USA and Canada, UK and Ireland, fake polygraph, create your own truth is the slogan, right? So they said, get a real and fully verifiable fake polygraph test certificate proving you have taken a polygraph test. It's pretty hard for me not to do it in Karin's accent. Karin, okay, is another character from my other channel, GNT. If you want to check out my second channel, I think the mods have shared the link if you can. Anyway, so we went over that there. But she literally, Letecia, signed up for this, okay? And you can get either a standard test or a bespoke fake polygraph test. You can prove your truth for husband or wife problems, boyfriend or girlfriend problems, family and friends problems, issues on nights out, disagreements, novelty situations, and infidelity issues. So when Letecia phoned back, after they said the company blocked her based on the questions that she asked, because you literally provide the questions. Let's see, they say you choose the questions, the location, and the results. We send you a fully verifiable or verified report within 1 business hour. Okay, so here's the testimonials. The standard test is £45 or $60, and the bespoke fake polygraph test is £250 or $300 US. All right. So if we go here now from the probable cause affidavit, let me try to zoom in for you. Okay, so here we go. They say investigations contacted Luke Devlin utilizing the phone. Okay, Mr. Devlin provided information to investigators, including the questions and answers that Letecia had provided. So hold on. So they say, this is what the witness talked about today. So they say on February 18th, 2020, at about 11:16 hours, Letecia again called. We heard those calls today. We've read this before multiple times from this probable cause affidavit, but today we got to hear those calls, which was I got secondhand embarrassment there for Letecia. So during this call, Letecia inquired about an email that she received. The unknown male stated that her report was blocked by management based on the content of the questions, and stated that with any illegal activities, they reserve the right to not send the report. Letecia's response was the following: "What do you do now? Just delete and go on about life and keep the money?" He said, "Yes, we do indeed." She said, "Okay, I got you. Thank you. Bye." All right. Now, these are the questions she asked, because now you remember, you heard it here with us. She's phoned back to say, "I read the terms and conditions, and you are allowed to ask about infidelity." And then the guy was like, "Yes, you are, but you didn't ask about infidelity." She's like, "I did." Okay. These are the questions she provided for her fake polygraph certificate. A. So it says, 184. Letecia provided the following questions and the answers that were supposed to be truthful to fakepolygraph.com. A. Do you intend to answer these questions regarding your stepson truthfully? Yes. B. Is your birthday August 4th, 1983? Yes. Please don't forget, she formulated these questions. C. Did you participate in any way in causing harm to your stepson? No. D. Did your stepson return with you to your home? Yes. And E. Did you participate in any way in causing the death of your stepson? No. I mean, does that sound like infidelity to you? They say, I submit to the court that if Letecia had nothing to hide, she would not have had to pay for fake polygraph results. All right. So that is what we have there. Now you've seen it again. If you have already seen it on the playlist, go. If you haven't, go check it out anyway. If you remember, we were looking at that just a few weeks ago in preparation for this trial. We did quite a deep dive on that. And as I say, on my second channel, there's even a parody about it because it's so ridiculous. Okay. Yeah, what Kayan says, what an awful website. And it still exists. Don't get any ideas, okay? Grizzlies, do not go to fakepolygraph.com. Okay, so that was the morning session. It started off really rough because there was no warning that now with a new witness camera angle, they're going to show us that TV and show us all those graphic pictures. And they were beyond graphic. Okay, now for everyone, which is very few, it's really 0.1% of people that are like, we are adults, we can look at graphic photos. No. It's unethical. It's terrible for Gannon's family and friends. YouTube will block that. They'll block the stream. So if people were able to just stream that, because YouTube will be like violation of their policies, because it is. And it's just disrespectful to the victim. So I didn't show that. We blocked it as soon as we can. Woo, but that started off rough, okay? But we learned that, he was stabbed 18 times and there was blunt force trauma, which caused 4 lacerations. He was shot at 3 times, but once, actually shot, and it was just hectic. So thank you so much all for being here, because I don't think I could have survived it without all of you. I think we were all in it together. Really appreciate it. Make sure that you go to the next stream. This stream will lead you to that stream. And I will see you there after an hour and 15 minutes is what they say. I'll just check the time. I'll probably start 5 minutes before that. All right. So I will see you there, everyone. Thank you so much. And if you can have something like have a stretch, something to eat, I'll see you there afterwards. All right, everyone. Bye. Let's play this one.
Hi Grizzlies, you will now be redirected to the next stream. See you there.